Well, that's enough of that crap. Welcome to Naked Zombie Paranormal Radio with your hosts, Brad Scott and Wadsy.
It is the 20th of June 2011 and you are listening to Naked Zombie Paranormal Radio. I'm your host Brad Scott, and joining me tonight, when he can make it in because he's extremely lazy, doesn't like to get out of bed, is Mr. Wadsworth.
You don't pay me enough to get out of bed.
I don't pay you anything. You just remember that. You love it too.
I do.
Yes.
Working for nothing.
Yes, dance for me.
No. We got guests.
We do have guests. And
we got a guest.
We have a guest.
Yes.
Okay, well, listen, just before quickly...
You've got video cameras, have you?
No cameras anyway.
Cool.
Anyway, look, just a few quick messages before we get out there. Just like people to know that, the show's doing really well. We're getting lots and lots of hits and lots of listeners, which is fantastic. So
hits aren't leaving any bruises, are they?
No,
okay.
it's not about me. But we do request that we are starting to get booked out.
Right.
I mean, which is good. So the show is now basically we're doing it 3 nights a week.
Wow.
Yes, rather than just a 1 night a week we originally planned on. But so we're going to try and do it as much as we can because I don't want people waiting to be interviewed, because we're getting a lot of great feedback and a lot of great interesting people coming through. So if you 3 nights a week we'll try and do it, and we'll take it from there. Like I said, we do it when we can, and it's good. Anyway, on to the show.
Certainly can do.
On to the show.
I'm ready.
Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I'm going to put my radio voice on, eh? Okay. Well, anyway, tonight we have an excellent guest, and it's an Australian guest. And
good place to start.
Good place to start, and I love talking to other Australian people within the field. And I'll just give you a bit of a bio on this gentleman. He is actually a radio broadcaster and has worked for the Australian Broadcasting Corporation for 14 years, undertaking continuous weekly live wildlife talkback segments in which he can instantly identify all forms from listeners' description of the creatures people encounter. People ask him to identify different mammals, birds, reptiles, frogs, fish, invertebrates, everything that washes up on the beach, crawls in your backyard, or is encountered in the bush. It is rather unique that he can identify everything from physical descriptions to the calls that people have heard. So you can actually hear it and tell you what it is. So this is quite remarkable. 90% of the time, his physical descriptions and then the calls that people have heard are easily identifiable. Known and classified animals... He knows classified animals and everything. He knows what they are. He keeps records of people, the animal, the location, and the date. On very rare occasion, he receives reports from unknown animals and sometimes live on radar, but more often on the internet or phone, of people who listen to him and they contact him privately. And this is a good part. It's all good, but this is a really interesting part. He has also self-published 2 books: Australian Cryptozoology, which contains actual drawings of yowies as observed in the field, drawn from life, and Understanding Extraterrestrials, which includes the first zoological classification of 29 species of aliens visiting our planet. Please welcome to Naked Zombie Paranormal Radio, Mr. Gary Opet. Hello, Gary. How are you? And thank you for joining us tonight.
Hello. Yes, I'm glad to be able to join you and speak with you, Brad.
Listen, it's wonderful to have you on, of course, and it's always great to speak to another fellow Australian about the different aspects of the paranormal. Now, we're going to break this up into two segments tonight. The first half of tonight, we're going to talk about the yowie, or for people overseas, that's the Bigfoot or Sasquatch or something. It's around the same family line. And the second part, we're going to actually talk about the aliens.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Yeah, talk about the aliens. So, sorry, just Wadgy's just sitting here with like a blank look on his face, so he doesn't want to make about all this just yet. So what we're going to do is, Gary, now, can you tell us from the very, very start of your experiences and going back, and you have been doing this for a long, you actually teach and everything on cryptozoology, I understand all that, but how did this all start for you?
It started for me when I was working as a National Park Ranger in the very early 1970s up at Lamington National Park near the famous O'Reilly's Guest House.
Yep.
And in Queensland, Australia, and now I had always been interested in the identification of animals and plants since I was a child, and as I was growing up, was always going to the Australian Museum in Sydney and getting various animals identified. I bought guidebooks and joined the Naturalist Society of New South Wales.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time I was working for the national parks, I knew all the wildlife really well, and I was positive, like everyone else, that there was no unknown animals because, Europeans had been on this continent for a couple of 100 years. The museums are full of specimens. I was always interested in reading all the books and scientific journals, and we knew exactly what was there. And I would spend much of my time, because I so loved the Australian bush, I spent much of my time identifying first reptiles and amphibians, lizards and frogs and snakes, and then birds, and then plants and mammals, right from an early age, pre-teenage years.
Yep.
And so I knew all the animals, and I'd read much of the Australian literature, and there was only one unknown animal that was ever mentioned, which was the bunyip. And the bunyip was a very strange animal. There was even a skull or two had been exhibited at the Australian Museum, but then was found to be nothing more than a deformed colt. But it was a bizarre animal that lived in the forest and virtually could never be seen. Was known to swim in the water at times in freshwater rivers and lakes, and but it had a very distinctive, loud, booming call. And but no one ever knew if it really existed. Nothing was ever found of one. And when I was up there in Lamington National Park as a National Park Ranger, I knew famous old Bernard O'Reilly, who had discovered the Stinson plane wreck and saved the pilots, and he ran the famous guest house, which still operates today.
Yep.
And I'd read his books, and so we knew everything that existed. We didn't expect that there was anything unknown possibly living in those wonderful forests. And then one night, something attacked the ranger's cabin. Started thumping on the walls, and then went underneath the cabin and began throwing tools out from underneath the house. So I was off on that day. I arrived the next day. The ranger in charge believed he was being attacked by a maniac, and ran up to the O'Reilly's guest house, and then came down with help and with torches, and there was no sign of anybody, and so I couldn't quite come to any conclusion of what had happened. But when I arrived the next day, there were all the tools thrown out on the grass, and we were wondering, gee, I wonder who would do that. And we put them all back under the house. And then I went to get the firewood, and we had a huge fire stash because we used to supply the campers and picnic areas with firewood. So we had this huge wood pile of great big pieces of timber, and in a huge pile that was about 4 or 5 metres long and 1 metre across, 2 metres high, and was held together by big stakes of timber about 3 metres long that we'd hammered 1 metre into the ground to keep it all solid.
To keep it all together.
Yeah, keep it all together. And we used that. We didn't have hot water up there in those days. We'd boil the copper in the backyard and use the hot water for washing purposes, and we had a fuel stove, so we wanted to eat. We set a fire in the fuel stove. It was a very remote location. So it's
typical Australian bush.
And I was astounded to find that the wood pile had been attacked, and those stakes had been pulled out of the ground and the timber thrown around the place. And of course we couldn't imagine what on earth could do something like that. And it was complete mystery for another 3 or 4 years until the head ranger of Springbrook, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Winter,
Yep.
he came face to face with a gorilla-like animal in the rainforest, and up at Bestival Lookouts in the prehistoric Antarctic beach rainforest.
Yep.
And he was within a few metres of it, and he stood there staring at it, absolutely stunned and amazed, for several minutes until it walked off. And then he rushed back to the National Park headquarters, and a very close friend of mine, another National Park ranger by the name of John Duncan, he was there, and he told me later that this head ranger, who was very well respected and lived there for many years, came in white as a ghost, and he said, "You couldn't believe it, but I just saw a gorilla in the rainforest."
I mean, just quickly on that, Gary, just for people for overseas to understand about Australia and our rainforests and bushlands, that we don't have bears, we don't have large apes or monkeys or anything. Gorillas. That we've got primates, we've got a lot of nasty, creepy crawlies and everything, but we actually don't have anything like that within our continent, do we?
No, not at all. The Australian fauna is quite unique, and the Australian animals and plants are related to the South American animals and plants. Australia was originally joined to Antarctica and South America and Africa during the age of the dinosaurs, and we call that ancient supercontinent Gondwana land. And then about 50 million years ago, Australia broke away from Antarctica, and the only animals living in Australia, mammals anyway,
Yep.
were little pygmy possums that had got across from South America. And over the next 50 million years, as the Australian continent moves at 8 centimetres a year, moving north, and is still travelling north, being dragged north by a great plume of white-hot magma 100 kilometres or so below the continent, the Australian ecosystem evolved in complete isolation from the rest of the world, and the marsupials, an ancient group of mammals, dominated. So we had no modern eutherian or placental mammals, things like humans and monkeys and dogs and cats and horses and cattle and sheep, all the modern mammals. Australia is a land of prehistoric ancient mammals, still very modern, highly evolved, of course, but come from an ancient ancestry. We have the only egg-laying mammals on Earth, the platypus and echidna, monotremes, that are related to the ancient furred reptiles of Gondwana. And then we have marsupials. The only other marsupials are the South American and North American opossums.
Yep.
And so they're distantly related to them. And from those possums we've got kangaroos. We've also got Tasmanian tigers or thylacines, Tasmanian devils, carnivorous marsupials called quolls, wombats, koalas, and of course we've got the giant flightless birds, emus and cassowaries, some wonderful giant lizards like the goannas or monitors.
Oh, okay. So excuse me, Gary, sorry to interrupt, but just getting back to the actual... So basically, in a nutshell, this park ranger, right? He's standing there, and basically he sees something that technically should not even exist in our country. There should be no way anything of a primate nature, especially that size, should be living in this country. What was his next action? What did he actually do then?
Well, he was...
he was a bit scared, I bet.
And the national parks, I think, tended to hush it up a bit because they didn't want hunters to come running into the national park trying to hunt this big ape-like creature.
Yep.
But then it got out into the local Gold Coast Bulletin, and then other people began reporting what they had seen. Other people had seen this big bipedal gorilla-like animal. Now, Australia, as we were saying before, has never had any apes, and Australia has never been joined to Southeast Asia, so we have none of the Asian animals. Like, we don't have any monkeys or deer or tigers or elephants or or rhinoceroses or any of the other squirrels, all of those Asian animals. We don't have those. But some rats, native rats, got across millions of years ago floating on logs. And of course, the wonderful Aboriginal people got here maybe 60,000 years ago.
Yep.
So we do have, true native Australian humans and their wonderful Dreamtime culture.
Yep.
But big gorilla-like animals simply shouldn't exist. But we didn't. But we knew that Australia, like so many other places, had once had an amazing group of animals called megafauna, giant marsupials and other very large animals that well known from fossil deposits. But there was nothing from the fossil deposits of anything that looked anything like a big ape.
So how many people, I mean, I know you've been researching this for many years. How many recorded incidences have there been of, now I'm going to call them a Bigfoot only for our international listeners, and so they understand. How many recorded sightings of the Australian Bigfoot have there been witnessed in our country in the last, say, 100 years or so?
Well, going back around about close to 200 years.
Yeah, time when the Europeans first,
And up to the present, there's been about 3,000 sightings, close sightings, that actually been shot and killed.
Really?
And they were quite well known in the early settling days, the early pioneering days. And we discovered that quite by accident. All memory or knowledge of these animals had been completely lost. And it wasn't until some wonderful researchers began searching through old newspapers, going back to the earliest days of settlement, and they discovered every now and then there would be a report of a native Australian gorilla, and it would say, the native Australian gorilla or hairy man has been observed again, and there was even an illustration in 1912 in the Sydney newspaper, an actual drawing of one of these animals that was drawn by Will Donald from a description given to him by Charles Harper, a surveyor, and that was published in the Sydney Sun, 10th of November 1912. So, and that's a wonderful drawing of the animal. And then we discovered that there was even the animal was supposed to have been exhibited live in London. And that's simply because the British Museum has a couple of handbills which has a very detailed drawing of this huge hairy wild man, and with and he's standing. He's twice the height of two ordinary humans.
So it's about 12 foot tall.
And it describes how he was captured at Botany Bay just after the first European settlement. And it said how that this animal had chased off some sailors who were drinking rum. It drank the rum itself and ate the food that was lying about.
Yep.
It was rendered unconscious. They tied it up and they took it back to England and exhibited it for years.
Sorry to interrupt, Gary. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, I haven't heard of anything like this actually happening, and I've been around for nearly 20 years in the field. I must be living in the closet. But this is there any? There is.
Time to come out.
Yeah, time to come out. Stop it. I'm quite excited about this. Is there actually any actual still proof of this creature still in
they used to collect everything back then. I mean, there's got to be a museum somewhere.
I mean, this could turn the whole cryptozoology field on its head if there is still this Bigfoot sitting in a British museum somewhere. Do they still have it?
See, they didn't end up keeping the specimen. The only evidence they've got is these two handbills, these two advertisements describing the animal and saying, that it can be seen at this particular place and it costs so much a penny or something to go and see it. And you'll find that what everyone's been saying about it is true. And see, in those days, this is going back a couple of hundred years.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, they were exhibiting dodos and all kinds of amazing things
Yeah,
from around the world. But then, if the thing died, they wouldn't bother, we'll take it carefully to the museum and preserve it. They'd just probably bury it.
Yep.
Yeah, taxidermy wasn't that good.
And go on try to find something else interesting to show to people. You know, everything was regarded as sort of like almost circus freaks. You know, look at the giant fat flightless bird from Mauritius, the dodo, or look at the giant hairy man.
Plus it was all new, and
Yeah, it was from a
And of
new
course
country,
then-
wasn't it?
even the dodo for a long time was thought to be a fabrication, that it never really existed.
Well, that's what they
until
thought about.
They found the head and 1 foot of one still left preserved in a museum.
I mean, that's what they thought about the platypus as well, wouldn't they? When they caught one of those as well, when they first took them from Australia.
That's right.
This is fascinating stuff. I mean, this is great. Now, Gary, sorry to interrupt you again, mate, but I've got to ask questions I'm sure the listeners want to hear. Now, your book, Australian Cryptozoology. Now, this is self-published, isn't it? Now, is there any way that people can actually purchase this book from you, or do they need to get hold of you via a website or something like that? Is there any information that you can give us so people can actually contact you over this?
Yes, look, I'll give you my email address.
Yep, if you can give us over here, that'd be wonderful. If people want to take this down, if you can read it out for us, please.
So that's Gary Opet, which is spelled Garyopit, Gary Opet at gmail.com, Gary Opet at gmail.com. And you could also write to me at my address, which is Post Office Box 383, Brunswick Head, New South Wales 2483.
Well, there's a good thing about it as well. If they want it, they can contact me as well, and I can pass the information on to you, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
So just saying that, I mean, because we're set up the way we are. So if anybody has any questions or has any queries about the Australian Bigfoot or anything like that, anything to do with cryptozoology in Australia, if they'd like to get hold of me via a contacts page on Naked Zombie Paranormal Radio, you will find it www.brad-scott.com.
no, are you?
No, good, here we go. No, as you. Just send it through to me and I'll make sure that Gary gets it because I've got all these details here. Now, Gary, we've got about 8 minutes to go left on this segment before we go to aliens. And Mr. Wadsworth has a question for you.
Yeah, just flicking through your book, you've got the tambourine tiger.
Yes.
Yes. How close is that to the Tasmanian tiger, the thylacine?
Yeah, look, we seem to have 2 large species of carnivorous marsupial surviving in Australia. One species is supposed to be extinct for thousands of years and the other extinct for only about 60 years. The Tasmanian tiger or thylacine is a wolf-like carnivorous marsupial, which means it's got a pouch and it raises its young in a pouch just like a kangaroo, but the pouch faces backwards. It looks exactly like a dog, but with a tail more like a kangaroo, a long stiff tail. It can jump like a kangaroo or run like a dog, and it's a meat eater.
Yep.
And the last one in captivity was 1936, and no one's been able to capture one since.
So
That's one of the
basically,
animals.
just in a nutshell, I'll just explain what this thing looks like. I'm looking at a drawing of one now. So you imagine a kangaroo, you have it down flat, shorten the legs, crawls on all fours, and it's got a pouch that's back to front in a nutshell, isn't it? And it's got really, really sharp teeth and it can move quite quickly. Very similar to the Tasmanian tiger, except the Tasmanian tiger is more of a dog-looking creature. Is that correct?
Well, it is very dog-looking. The tambourine tiger, it looks like that's another animal. It's got a variety of names, and it's often called the striped marsupial cat. And we think, and I've been fortunate enough to see that twice, a very close observation.
Really?
And another 2 times, shorter observations.
Yep.
And we think that's an animal called the marsupial lion, well known from fossil deposits. So this was another animal, marsupial again, but a more cat-like animal, and it was actually described in the earlier zoological books as a living inhabitant of Australia with lots of observations, but no museum specimens. It was found as fossils many thousands of years old, and it's also banded or striped, but it's got a fluffier tail. So we seem to have two carnivorous marsupials, quite large animals, large dog size,
Yep.
both of which are supposed to be extinct, and yet sightings have come in, and I said I've had some excellent sightings of them.
Well, this is just fascinating, isn't it? I mean, these are supposed to be extinct animals.
That's right. And along with the yowie, I've had two observations of the yowie, and I've also heard it call several times. And I undertake fauna and forest surveys, and the way we undertake fauna surveys is that we wander through the bush, and most of the time we're listening for calls and looking for signs. So you can see the diggings in the ground or scratch marks on trees, or the calls of the animals tells you what animals are around, because most of you don't see them. Animals are very cryptic naturally. They don't like being seen because some are predators keeping a low profile so they can ambush their prey.
Yep.
And other animals are vegetarians, herbivores, and they don't want to be grabbed by anything. So most of the animals are fairly difficult to actually observe, which is natural anywhere in the natural environment, unless they're big plain animals on the open plains.
Just with the Australian Bigfoot, the yowie. Now, is it the same principle like the overseas, its cousins, that where you do tree knocking and you get rocks thrown at you if you come within their territory? Is that the same principles involved in that as well?
Yeah, exactly the same. It seems to be identical with the Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
Yep.
It may be the same as the animal seen in Asia.
Yep.
And yet it does all that. It thumps its feet on the ground. It roars. It has a call that sounds like ee, 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 ee.
Oh, okay.
It has a bark-like call that goes aroo, 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 and then it gurgles. I mean, it makes some bizarre calls, but very rarely, usually about 3 in the morning.
Yep.
It has loud whooping calls, but the calls are quite unlike anything else, and they will approach you. I had one approach me a couple of years back now, and I had a small dog with me that was barking occasionally as the animal came towards us, whacking 2 sticks together, and it got within 7 or 8 metres of us, and it moved along beside us, and then just quietly moved off. But I got my best observation when I was in New Guinea, Papua New Guinea, 1974, when I was with a group of scientists from the Bishop Museum in Hawaii, and we're up at about 4,000 feet elevation, studying the wildlife, and in a very remote mountainous location. And I had this human-like creature cross the track directly in front of me, somewhat way down the track, but I got a perfect view of it, and it looked like some amazing wild human. Of course, the place was full of Stone Age New Guineans that we lived with, but this was quite different. And I heard it call many times as well, loud sort of primate-like calls. And we knew all the calls of forests. We had one bird of paradise, it took 9 months to track it down before we finally saw it. So, I mean, we were living in these forests, studying all the animals, and I was actually stunned to see an unknown bipedal ape-like animal. And what I think it is, the only thing I can imagine it is a species called Meganthropus archaeogavanicus, the giant ancient Java man, descended probably from Australopithecus robustus, and they were living in Java in Indonesia hundreds of thousands of years ago, along with Homo erectus and the hobbits that they discovered that Homo floresiensis lived until at least 13,000 years ago.
And these were the very small people, weren't they? That's what they call them, the hobbit. The skull was only dug up a little while ago, wasn't it?
There's been reports of those hobbits still living in Australia that also reports of them. Aboriginal people know of them. But
You can blame
the
Peter
interesting
Jackson for
about
that.
my book, this Australian
Oh, yes.
Cryptozoology, it
Lord of the Rings.
describes a number of different
Peter
species,
Jackson.
but it's also got, as you said earlier, the first drawings done by field researcher Pixie Burns, who's actually been very closely observing
Yep.
these yowies.
Yeah, I've heard about Miss Burns, Pixie. Now,
What's the closest sighting to established suburbia or township has ever been in contact with them? I mean, are they always out in the bush or in rainforest, or do they venture out?
Like, will we see him at Kmart or something buying a new pair of sandals or something? So, you know, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, they'll come right into to the edge of suburbia. They've often been seen, and more people see them on the very edges of suburbia, where people have their backyards backing onto on bushland, national parks or nature reserves.
So they're curious.
People have actually seen them in their backyards.
Oh, goodness me, I live out in the bush. I just pay closer attention.
Sides of houses and looked into windows.
Yeah, they've been game to come up to the house. Now, you were saying that this lady, Pixie Burns. Now, listen, we're going to spend a little bit longer on this. I know we want to get into the extraterrestrial side of things, but I'm just fascinated by this.
Yeah.
We're going to miss the ad break because this is just too cool for school.
Exactly.
What we're going to do is we're going to go and give this another 10 minutes, and we'll talk about extraterrestrials after this. Now, the Pixie Burns. Now, the claim to fame that she has is she's actually goes and sings to the yowies. Is this correct? At Springbrook there, she'll actually go into the rainforest and she'll sit there and sing to them and brings them out. Is this correct?
Yes, that's right. She grew up living in caravan parks. Her father was a builder, and they tend to move around. And Pixie grew up with a lot of caravan park people, often retired farmers and prospectors and Aboriginal people, and she was told about these yowies, and then she eventually began to see them herself, only on very rare occasions. And she really loves the natural environment, of course, and she'd go prospecting for semi-precious stones along creeks, and she's really been a singer, and she'd love to sing, and she'd boil the billy and cook some potatoes, and you know, just spend a little bit of time, only 2 or 3 kilometres from the house.
Yeah, out in nature, as we all like to do, being Aussies.
Rural towns like that.
Yep.
And of course, the Australian bush is a very safe place. So you know, even though it's got
redbacks and death adders and
too many yowies walking around.
But yeah, no, so that's what she'd do. So she'd actually go out and into the wilderness, so to speak, on inverted commas in this. She'd go out away from the house. She'll start to cook and sing, and this would attract the yowies that actually come out. Now, did the yowies actually join her at the campsite, or they keep their distance back? Because this is all very curious. I wonder how this...
No, she didn't realise she was being... they're so difficult to see. They're so cryptic. They're so careful, because they had to live for thousands of years with Aboriginal hunters, that they don't generally like being seen. No. And so her first viewing of one was when a pack of wild dogs or dingoes actually attacked one. She climbed up the tree because the dingoes or wild dogs, which are like the Australian native wolf, came howling and rushing straight towards her. And she climbed up a tree thinking they were attacking her. And before they reached her, she was actually stunned to see this hairy gorilla-like creature suddenly jumped to its feet, and the dogs attacked it and were biting it, and it grabbed one of the dogs and killed it, and held it by the head and beat the other dogs off with the body of the dog that it killed, and then chased the dogs off and threw the dead body over a tree and walked off, and that was her first observation of one.
Yep, right. So basically, okay, we've just got to stay just on topic a bit here, with the actual the Australian Bigfoot. So she's actually come across it. She's taken off up a tree to get away from the dog attack. This thing's killed a couple of dingoes. Now, when she saw it, were they in a family pack, or were they on their own, or are they territorial? Are they nomadic, or what's?
Yeah, I'd say they live in small family groups, and generally the females, particularly from Pixie's observations, but also other researchers that have been studying them, and you don't often get a view of them. But what their people generally seem to find is that the mothers and the young, the females and the young, very rarely ever come anywhere near human habitation. I mean, they remain in remote areas, and because these are very powerful, fast-moving animals, they run very fast. And the interesting thing is, they can run fast on both on their hind legs or on forelegs. They knuckle walk just
they knuckle like a gorilla does. So their actual arms, their forearms are very much like a gorilla in that sense, where they actually use their forearms and their fists as extra set of feet, and they just tromp along. If you know, people have seen gorillas run, if you know what I mean. And there was an interesting story on the news a while ago. Had that gorilla that was walking upright. Did you see that in the news?
Yeah.
It was very unusual for a gorilla to actually stand up on its hind legs and take strides like a man would. So it uses the capacity of its hind legs plus its forward arms to get along at higher speeds. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's right, and that's why I really began to believe that these things must be real, because I mean, if someone was just hoaxing or mistaking a person or a hermit or some long-haired hippie person living in the forest
like you,
for a yowie or a Bigfoot or for something unusual, you would believe that. But when you hear, right from the earliest accounts, it would always describe that not only would they travel on their hind legs, but they would also drop down onto all fours and travel even faster on four legs. Then you know it can't possibly be a human.
No, well, that's right. And I noticed in your book you got a picture of yourself holding a cast print of a foot at the back page there, which is quite remarkable. 1998.
Springbok.
So I mean, Springbok's not that far from Brisbane here. I mean, that's the thing. It's
close
probably
to the Gold Coast.
Yeah, it's close to the Gold Coast. Yeah, the hinterlands and stuff like that. Gary, what we're going to do? Look, I would love to continue this conversation on the Yowies at another date, but like we've promised the listeners, it was Yowies and aliens tonight, extraterrestrials. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend the next 20 minutes, if it's okay with you, of course, to discuss your second book, which it's called Understanding the Human and Extraterrestrials. I'm tongue-tied. You read it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Humans, extraterrestrials, and an awakening
of the planetary mind.
I still didn't get that right.
No, that's okay. We're doing well here. We're really trying.
We're not Rhodes scholars, by the way.
No, well, at least one of us isn't anyway. That's
I'm definitely not. That must be you.
Anyway, so what we've got here, look, like I said, Gary, look, the first book, Australian Cryptozoology. I mean, this book is fantastic, people. You really got to get in touch with Gary to read it. I mean, it's got great illustrations, it's got photos, and this is all around Queensland too. I mean, which is really interesting. So sometime we're going to have to try and get out to see Gary and see if we can go on an excursion with him and do it for the show. Yeah, if we can get some funds up, that'll be great. Now, the next book we got is Understanding Humans, Extraterrestrials, and the Awakening of the Planetary Mind. Now,
you can say that and I can't.
Oh, I don't know, even with a stutter.
Yes.
Now, with this one here, Gary, I mean, this is basically, it's got all Latin and Greek terminology of aliens. Is that correct?
Yeah, look, so what this other book is that I've published, it's a review of recent scientific discoveries from multidisciplined research. It gives us a new understanding of ourselves, our world, our universe, and the extraterrestrials that appear to interrelate with us. So originally, I wasn't writing the book to have anything to do with extraterrestrials. What I was really interested in, what are all the latest scientific discoveries that show what human beings are and what our world is, what we're constructed out of, how the universe operates, etc. But I'd always been interested in extraterrestrials as well, because I've always been interested in natural phenomena. Like I love all the natural sciences. You know, I love physics and chemistry. And I spent a lot of time out of doors. You know, I'd spend, like most people live inside, but I always spend my time outside as much as I can. I work out of doors.
Yep.
I do fauna and flora surveys. I've done a lot of travelling. At night I spotlight, looking for animals at night. So I'm out there looking for things. I'm not looking for unknown things or things that aren't known to exist. I'm simply looking for things that are known to exist because I'm interested in seeing them. I'm interested in the animals and the plants. So, and I'm also interested in the stars and the planets. I'm always watching the stars, not expecting to see anything unusual, hoping to see a falling star, a meteorite.
Just on that, but as you've been out and looking at this stuff, is your opinion that we are visited by extraterrestrials, and is there, I guess, in some people believe that we're the only things in the whole solar system that could even possibly exist, but I think a good 85% of the population believe we can't just be it. We can't be the only beings in this whole cosmos, galaxies, and universes. But this classification of these alien species, now, these were actually picked up by people who actually witness and encounter these these extraterrestrials. Is that correct?
Yes. So what I began to do, I began to research the UFO field, the UFO phenomena, because I've always been interested in the way life exists on this planet, and the interesting thing is that for all the potentially existing life forms throughout the universe, we are the extraterrestrials. We are to everything else that may be out there, we are the bizarre things that live at the end of the universe, as it was, the wonderful human beings in this wonderful planet of ours. And and I myself have seen around about 20 UFOs over the years, one every 3 or 4 or 5 years.
So you have personally seen 20 UFOs in your time?
Yes, around about 20. And when I say UFOs,
unidentified flying object,
I'm completely unable to identify. I don't know what they are.
Were these fairly close? Were they up high? I mean, we can always tell what an airplane is, and we can tell what a blimp is, and we understand that. But these were actually in your viewpoint, of an extraterrestrial nature.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say the extraterrestrial nature. I just say unidentifiable objects.
Okay. Just so we clarify that.
They were always lights moving slowly across the sky, and I watched one once move through a cloud, and when it moved through a cloud you could see the shape of it, which is rounded at the front and triangular at the back, and then I saw it change course and fly directly in front of a landing airliner coming down to a local airport.
Okay.
But I saw one in the daytime, which was the most amazing sight, which is in the middle of the day, on the Gold Coast over the Broadwater. I stopped at a red light beside the Broadwater of Southern Moreton Bay, and so I was looking at over the water, and suddenly this golden flattened bell-like object suddenly appeared and hovered there for a minute or two, and then disappeared. And it wasn't all that far away, and it was reflecting sunlight. It was close enough to get a very close view of it. It was only, might have been 50 metres away or something, and maybe, 30, 40, 50 metres above the water or whatever. And so I got a close view of it. But beyond that, I haven't seen extraterrestrials or anything, but just examining the records, I found that there's been many descriptions of extraterrestrials, and just buying books and reading books, particularly wonderful books by Lauren Coleman, A Field Guide to Extraterrestrials. That's a particularly interesting book, and that American scientist, he's taken the descriptions from sightings going back 100 years, and a wonderful artist by the name of Patrick Huey, H-U-Y-G-H-E, Patrick Huey, and Lauren Coleman. They put this wonderful book together, The Field Guide to Extraterrestrials, a complete overview of alien life forms based on actual accounts and sightings. So I had to give a talk. I was asked to give a talk on a biologist's perspective of extraterrestrials.
Yep.
And so at this talk, I gave actually a couple of these talks to the Australian UFO conferences. I'd never been involved with anything like this before. I was never one to join UFO societies and run around looking for them. I was, as I said, always a skeptic and working on a natural environment. But and not all that interested in sort of technology. Like, I'm more interested in the animals, the intelligent animals themselves. Yeah. That pilot these.
I just have sorry to interrupt, Gary. I just got a quick question now. This is to do with the biological side of these extraterrestrials. Now, my understanding is, and going back to basic high school science here, because I think that was it in my case of things, but wouldn't something, say an extraterrestrial landed on Earth, right? And according to the book, there's over 29 different species. Now, for them to survive in our atmosphere, wouldn't they have the same sort of oxygen content as what we do? Or if you know where I'm going with this, or you don't think they could last long here because of our atmosphere and our oxygen levels and stuff like that? Because you think in different planets with different structures and different microsystems and stuff like that, their whole genetic makeup in a lot of ways wouldn't allow them to actually to be here, except, we heard of the Greys and stuff like that. Everyone knows who they are, the little short fellas with the big eyes. I mean, I think there was a movie out called Paul now, which I want to go and see when it comes out. I'll take it along and show you. Yeah. But that's the thing, Gary. Do you think that biologically they couldn't survive on our planet, or do you think there are so many other solar systems like ours that could support alien life?
Or are they so advanced that they can adjust to anything?
Now, look, they wouldn't be able to survive even for 1 second on our planet if they were breathing our air, because we only survive because we're native to this planet.
That's right.
We're composed of microbes and bacteria. The latest scientific studies of human tissue has discovered that we're only about 1% human, a maximum of 10% human, and about 90 to 99% non-human. Because humans, like all other animals and plants, have been colonised by endless numbers of microbes. And so for every human cell, and humans consist of around about 200 different kinds of cells, that's basically what we're made out of. We're made out of brain cells and blood cells and skin cells and liver cells and muscle cells and bone cells. And so there's about 200 different kinds of human cells. But for every, and these cells, of course, are microscopic. Now, for every human cell, the scientists have discovered there's around about 1,000 non-human cells living around every human cell.
Oh, okay.
And these are tiny microbes and viruses that their natural habitat is the human body. They cover our skin, they digest our food for us, and they protect us from other microbes that would otherwise invade us.
Is this where the terminology of the hybrid comes in? Because I'm sure you would have heard this, where with a lot of people into UFOs believe that there has been, well, we've all heard of abductions and stuff, and people are being cross-mated with extraterrestrial life, and these hybrids are produced. Do you think that, I know it probably sounds a bit odd, but do you think that could be a possibility as well, that if these extraterrestrials, and this is all hypothetical, if these extraterrestrials exist and they come down to Earth, they take someone up on their mothership, probe their brains out, whatever, and produce a hybrid being, Prius, which will be capable of living on Earth, if you know what I mean? Is that the way they tend to go in, or you think that's just Hollywood sort of hype? Because I'm curious, because a lot of people have different views on this, and this is what's interesting.
I can tell you pretty much exactly what's going on.
Please do. I'd love to hear it.
Now, because human being and any other animal and plant exist on this planet as part of a larger living organism, Gaia, the living planet.
Yeah, Gaia,
so
third of the Earth.
The same microbes that live outside our bodies live inside our bodies, etc. We're a true part of the environment. If we were to travel to another planet, like you see on Star Trek or any science fiction, you couldn't beam down to that planet and then inhale the atmosphere of that planet, because if that was a living planet and it had oxygen in it that you could breathe, it would also have, it was a living planet, be full of microbes. So in the air there's about 10,000 microbes in every square metre of air. So we're sucking them in all the time, but we're immune to them. So if you were to land on an alien planet and you took one breath of air, you'd immediately inhale thousands of alien microbes that would immediately begin to eat you from the inside out.
Well, that's like, what's that movie? Oh, God, I'm into sci-fi movies. What's that movie called with the aliens? War of the Worlds. Same thing, the same principle. That's what you're saying is basically because...
Well, the bacteria ate them.
They died because of bacteria. It wasn't anything that the army could throw at them. It was what was microscopic and tiny, because it drank our water, breathed our oxygen, and snuffed them out that way.
Yeah.
So that's what you're trying to say. It's the same principle as of what was in the movie.
That's right. So I would say that the reason that you don't see extraterrestrials beaming themselves down on Earth is simply because they cannot survive on this particular kind of gravity. Because remember, we live at a particular air pressure. The shape of our body is shaped by the pressure of the air pushing down on us. So we're adapted to the gravity. We're adapted to the microbes that exist in the atmosphere. So extraterrestrials aren't liable to be wandering around inhaling an atmosphere full of, to them, alien organisms, because we are alien to them.
So that's like, you actually see a lot of stuff. I mean, and I'm going off YouTube and here and that, and I'm a big fan of YouTube, and I'm always looking at the weird and wonderful stuff that's on there, and you see videos like leaked videos of Area 51, and you see Roswell and you actually see like the blinky eyes. I mean, I know with special effects and everything, they can do just about anything nowadays to make it look real. So do you actually think like Area 51 and all the rest of it, would they be considered having extraterrestrial life on the basis and stuff like that, or do you think it was just a load of I mean, it's $1 billion industry, isn't it? I mean, the UFO, it is. There's so much money in it, and you reckon they just keep it going because of the more funding and stuff like. I'm just curious to see your thought on that.
It's a possibility. Because these extraterrestrials are probably, if they exist, and we don't have definite evidence they exist, but if they do exist, they would come from civilizations that are incredibly ancient, possibly millions of years old, and their technology be incredibly advanced, and that they would be able to study us without us being able to detect them. The same way we can study insects and ants and stuff, and they don't even know we're doing it. Or we can study other animals by putting radio tags on them, and we can record where they go, etc. So, and of course, the rarest thing in the universe are probably living planets. Living planets would be incredibly rare because it takes a number of unusual circumstances to have a planet that can have life. It's got to be close to a very stable star, so that H2O remains as liquid. So you've got water. It's got to have a faster spinning core so that you've got a magnetic field that will protect you from radiation. Solar radiation. It's got to it has to be lying at an angle of 22 degrees, like the Earth is.
So basically, what you're saying that the whole structure has to be the same what ours is now. Mirror image what we are now. Just we get to these 29 species of alien. Look, we've got about 7 minutes to go, and I really want to just touch on this quickly. These 29 species of extraterrestrial. These are extraterrestrials that have actually been documented that have been on our planet, and this is what this comes up to. Now, these are ones that have been, like, say, Farmer Joe down the road, say, a UFO came down, land on my property, type thing, or are these actually from people that...
crop circles.
Are these actually, but these are from people, like, these are from airline pilots, fighter pilots, police officers. These are all from people fairly high up, aren't they? They're not just some... yokel down down the swamp area that just drank too much moonshine one night and started hallucinating. These are actually from people who have records of this. Is this correct?
Yes, that's correct. These are sightings that have come in over time, and so I put together this classification of extraterrestrials, as you said, 29 species, they mainly extend from the 1800s. Reports of them from the 1800s up until about the 1970s. I didn't worry about anything after the 1970s because they become more well known. So I'm interested in reports and sightings long before anyone would hoax anything.
That's right.
And then I set up a classification. It's purely based on contact accounts. So we don't have any specimens. But it's based on the Linnaeus classification of animals and plants on Earth. So for a kingdom, I've got animal ides. Ides means like an animal. A phylum Chordatides, they're like chordates, backboned animals. Mammalides, the class, because they're mammal-like.
Either mammal or aquatic or whatever, So basically what you've done is if you've taken all this information and you've given each one of these 29 species a Latin name, a scientific Latin name or Greek name to what its physical features are, what its basically its cell structure. So we know if it's more sort of like a blob, if you know what I mean, to consider someone with a backbone or spinal cord. So that's what you've basically done. Now, with this taken just from pictures people have drawn in eyewitness accounts, and you've sat down and gone, okay, well now I'm going to write down each sectionized part of this alien and give it a Latin name. Now, has any other group in the country around the world taken on board this Latin identification of these extraterrestrials, or this is something that is solely your own creation of those sort of, or its conjunction with other people?
No, I've put it together myself. And it has been refereed. And the way zoological classification works, the first classification is the permanent classification. That's how zoology always works. But there can be changes, of course. And, of course, it's purely academic because we don't really have any specimens. But like the greys you mentioned, I named them. And they're just named the same way you'd name an animal or plant, like the Tasmanian tiger, the thylacine. Its scientific name is the dog-headed pouched animal. The descriptions, scientific descriptions, usually are physical descriptions.
So could you tell me
where it comes from?
Just could you tell me now? Okay, just for everyone out there who's listened to the show, can you give us the scientific name for a grey?
Its scientific name is Polioderma gygasoculus. Polioderma gygasoculus.
Fibrolopticus.
Polioderma means grey skin. And the Latin words are always difficult to pronounce. Gygosculus means big-eyed. So big-eyed or large-eyed grey skin.
I think I'll just keep calling them greys because I don't think I can do it myself. But that's fascinating.
If someone wanted to start researching for this themselves or looking into sightings and trying to make up their own mind, where would you start looking?
Kmart.
Walmart. certainly purchase my book. Because
definitely. We'll plug your book. There's no worries about that. I mean, like I said, you want Gary's book, you need to go and give me a yell, jump on the page. I'll send you details through to Gary. And just quickly, you could also say this is going to become an e-book soon, isn't it, Gary?
That's correct, I'm going to publish them as e-books. I'm looking into that, and I'm going to set up a couple of blog sites, one called Australian Cryptozoology and Understanding Humans and Extraterrestrials.
Actually, and when you've done that, we'll put links up on this site on Naked Zombie Radio.
Will you let him answer my question?
Sorry, keep going. Sorry, Gary. I've been told by the peanut gallery.
And I think why the abducting is going on. As I say, living planets are rare things, and so the rarest thing in the universe would be DNA. I mean, living DNA. And these extraterrestrials, accounts of them, talking with people, and who knows if it's real or not, but it sounds you know, I've looked at all the data and all the information, and it all seems to run together. It seems to make sense.
Yep.
And what the extraterrestrials are saying to humans is that they're actually harvesting DNA from people. That's what they're interested. Often you'll hear they're interested in sperm. They're interested in ovum and stuff like that.
Yeah, ovaries and stuff. Yep.
Interested in hybridization.
Yep.
But that's to be expected. If you've got a species, an ancient species, living, now adapted to living in space, in spacecraft, and becoming over time, your gene pool becomes limited.
Yep.
And if they're so advanced, then of course they're not racist or specious, like they don't have negative opinions of one species or another, as we shouldn't. We shouldn't look at different humans in a negative way. All humans are equal, and the same way with all animals and plants. They're all
no, we agree with that.
All wonderful.
Yep.
And so they would look at humans. They look at humans in a very positive way. What they tell humans, if the reports are correct, they say they love humans. They're really interested in humans. They think they're the most wonderful things. They're particularly interested in the fact that they're not so advanced that they can still got independent thought, because all these extraterrestrials seem to communicate with technologically enhanced telepathy.
Well, like reading each other's minds, speaking that way. Look, Gary, I'm really sorry we've gone way over time for tonight, but listen, we'd love to get you back. Talking to you tonight has been absolutely brilliant, but we are really, really over time. I've got to keep it within the structure. But just a personal note, on behalf of our listeners, Gary, I'd just like to thank you. And please jump on to Naked Zombie. Get in touch with me, and I'll pass you through on to Gary's details.
Links and
stuff. And that
we'll
get out. So thank you again, Gary, for joining us tonight. And I hope you enjoyed talking to us.
I most appreciated having the opportunity of chatting with you tonight.
No, mate, it was our pleasure at all. So we'll go call it quits. Listen, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Again, please go on and check out Naked Zombie to get the links for Gary's work and stuff like that. I'd love to keep going. We are definitely going to get him back sooner rather than later, because I'd like to go more into the Bigfoot side of things, more into the alien. There's just so much information, we just don't have the time for it. Did you want to say anything on closing tonight, big boy?
No, I think we should go down to Springwood National Park.
Yeah, we're going to go down to Springwood. If anyone wants to give us some money, we'll go down to Springwood and check it out for ourselves. Anyway, so that's a good night for me. Have a good night, safe night. Take care, everybody, and we will see you very, very shortly.
Not a problem.